So I'm going to talk about the new Material Buttons 2.0. Okay, it has some animation, guys. Cool. All right. So there is actually Material Buttons 2.0, and these are the new Material Buttons that you might have used in your Flutter app if you have upgraded your Flutter, what do you call that, version in your dev channel. So let me introduce myself. My name is Haris. I'm a Google developer expert for Flutter, and I'm a founder for Learn Flutter Code. So I create easy to understand Flutter content for developers, something like this. And I guess if you guys know me back in 2019, I used to be a Flutter developer in this startup, which is currently called Blood. They're a feminine tech company. And interesting note, the first speaker, Asim, used to be my co-worker. So he used to be my colleague. Yes. So we actually work on this app, and it's a period tracking app, and it currently has 100,000 downloads. And yeah, it's built in Flutter from its inception. So getting back to introduction to Material Buttons 2.0, these are the different questions that you might want to ask. So what is material? Is there new material buttons? What are the new material buttons? How do I use them? Flutter, theming, and benefits. And lastly, will the old buttons be deprecated? So these are very valid questions. So let me answer step by step, right? So the first question, what is material? So material is basically the matter from which a thing can be made by some random philosopher. No, so if you were to Google, that's literally what's the material definition. But in actual fact, you might be thinking, what are material buttons, right? Because some of you might not be using material design or material. So material buttons come from material design. And this material design is actually a design system that's created by Google to help teams build high quality digital experience for Android, iOS, Flutter, and the web. So basically, Google's version of Bootstrap, right? And if you done a lot of like Flutter apps, right? When you import the library Flutter material.dart, that is actually the material design library that you use. So why the need of the material design? As developers, we want to care more about the code rather than the design itself, right? So we want what material design gives is a consistent design and user experience in the app. So you don't have to create things from scratch. You don't have to create buttons. You don't have to create the app bar from scratch. So it will actually help you save some time. Then the next question is that you might be asking, what are the new, is there new material buttons? Yes. So the new material buttons is in the master channel and also the dev channel. Sorry, I've never updated, but yes. So if you are in the dev channel, you'll be able to see the new Flutter material buttons. If I'm not wrong, it should be in the stable channel as well. So what are the new material buttons? So this is like a visual way for you to see what's the old and new. The old buttons, it's pretty dull and boring. So if you were to create any button, the old way, it is according to the color gray. But if you were to create a new material button, you could see that it actually takes in the color from a theme. So if you were to put the theme of the Flutter app as purple, you could see that all of the new material buttons actually follows the color of the app, which is purple or indigo. I'm not sure. Okay, so then why the update, you might ask? So there is a couple of times where people want to use the theme to actually help, you know, color the buttons or style the buttons. But there are certain issues that actually has been what do you call that, pop up when you were to try to do that. For example, the theme dot text theme is ignored by the raised button and flat button, because I guess nobody likes to put in the color styles for every single buttons, right? Even though you can like create a global variable and whatnot, but it doesn't feel right. All right. So then the objective of the update is actually to make the individual material button theme easier, right? So because when we were to do the old way, if you were to just create on the button theming doesn't really actually help. And then like simple changes like text, changing the text color and the theme should be easy, but it's not, because yeah, there is certain specifications that weren't added inside. And lastly, like for example, simple changes in the text color when hovered should be possible. So all of this thing is to make it easier for you guys to actually implement in the theming of your Flutter buttons. So then how do I use the new buttons? Like Nike say, just use it. So I am actually going to actually show you how to use the new buttons. So I'm going to give you a little bit of like code, and then after that a demo on how you can use the different the new material button. So the old material button is called flat button, but the new one is called text button. Then to create them, it is as simple as just typing it out, and these are the old and new ones. If you were to want to change the color for the buttons, right, for this text or flat button, for the old one, it looks something like this. We just add in a blue color inside the parameter color. But for the new one, it's a little bit different. So you can see that there is this new thing called the button style. So the button style, you could think of as like the text style for your text widget. So the button style requires a button style object. And then this is where you're able to actually color the buttons. So inside the button style, you have a couple of, sorry, a couple of parameter, and then you have to pass in this thing called material state property. So what's that? And then you have to use this .all method to pass in this colors.blue just to color the text button. So I'm going to explain what are the different, things that is inside the new material buttons or the button style. So a button style is a simple container for your different configurations that you want to do for your buttons. And this button style is the most common thing that you'll find in a button for all of your different buttons. Yeah. So then I think a little bit more on what is material state property is that it is an interface that helps you resolve the value on your widget's interactive state. So this includes the hovered, focused, and pressed. So I guess these are like the common interactions you do on a button. If you have any other interactions with your buttons, please leave down in the comment section. So I would say a little bit an easier way to explain is it is basically giving you a conditional statement that returns you the value that you need. So for example, the material state property color is when you want to hover over a button, it has a different color. If it's focused, it is a different color. And then if it's pressed, it's another different color. So you can do it for your mouse cursor or even your border. So I'm going to have a little demo on how you can actually use this material state property and actually like see what is the difference between the old buttons and the new buttons. So let me go to this demo over here. So I have with me here this text button demo. And then it is a simple demo that I've created. So I have a demo scaffold. Basically, it's just laying out the different the different buttons. So I have the flat button, which is the old one, and the text button, which is the new one. So you can see the difference is that inside my main.dart, right, my primary swatch or my primary color is purple. So if you were to create a simple flat button, it doesn't really like vibe, towards the color of the theme. But if you were to use the new text button, then it actually takes in the color of the theme as well. So if I were to zoom in for you guys, and I guess a little bit of a difference is that if I were to click on the flat button, right, the ripple is according to how deep your press is. So if you hold a long press, the ripple will do something like this. If you do a quick tap, it has that animation. But for the text button, a little bit different is that it actually like kind of slows down and it looks pretty nice or pretty cool, I would say. Right. So let's go back to the text button demo scaffold. And I'm going to show you on how the different way for you to actually color the new text button using the material state property. So for the flat button, you could see also at the same time, there is this flat button deprecation message over here. So if you have a Flutter project, I would recommend you to actually change it to the new one. So it's good that you are in this meetup to learn more on how you can migrate it. Okay, so I want to change a couple of things. So the first one is the colors.blue, right? So for example, I want to color my flat button to blue. So it's pretty simple for the flat button, but for the text button, you could see that I have to put in the button style. And then inside this button style, I have to use the foreground color. So foreground basically is the front part of the text button. So you could say that it is the front part, it should be the child widget of the text button. So if I were to save this, no, I'm not saving this uh, project. Okay. So you could see that for the buttons, for the flat button, it actually changes the background to blue while the foreground is changed into blue. So another thing that you might be asking is what is this dot all method? So like I said, the material state property is like a conditional. So the all is basically saying every single interaction, all of them should be in blue color in a way. But this is the foreground color, which is not exactly the different interactions that we need. So what we're going to do is we're going to change the different interactions, like for example, focus, hover color, and splash color to different colors. So for the flat button, you have these different colors, while the button style over here has this thing called the overlay color. So the overlay color is basically when it is, let me zoom in for you guys, focus, hovered, or press. So this is the property that you want to override if you want to control how it looks like. So inside this overlay color, so you use the material state property, but the resolve with is a method that actually helps you to give this different set of material state. So the different material state that you can find is focus, hovered, and press. And then if the state contains focus, then it will actually turn red. So I'm going to show you what focus is, but give me later. Then if the material state is hovered, it will be green. And if it's blue, I mean, if it's pressed, then it will be blue. So these are the different, I guess, ways for you to actually migrate from having this into this. So let me save this. Okay, now let me do the focus color. So this is like a Flutter web app. So focus is basically you want to select a certain like element or certain UI component, for example, buttons, right? So if you are lazy to like select, you press tab. So this is the select or focus color. So for the flat button is red. Then for the text button, it's also red. So this is like how this simple, I guess, if statement with the resolve with overlay color works. Then if you want to, for example, do a hover. So if you hover over the flat button, it turns green. And then same goes with the text button. If it contains the material state hovered, it's green. And then lastly, if you were to press it, it becomes blue. So the splash color becomes blue, while the new text button over here will also turn blue. So this blue is actually a shade of 100, which is very, very light. Then at the same time, if none of these states is containing the different material state that you need, then you probably have to return null, which refers to the widget's default. So the text button default. Okay, so now you might be thinking that's a lot of things that you need to do just to actually make the buttons change color when they're hovered. So is there an easier way to style the buttons? So I'm going to demo you with this outline button over here. So can you tell which is the new one and the old one? So, if you have noticed, one is in present tense and the other one is in correct past tense. So to create an outline button is pretty simple. The old one, you just pass in a simple color. But the new one now, how you're going to make it easier for you is that because there's three different types of button inside the material library, right? You can actually use the method style from. So this style from method is like a convenient way for you to actually just give the color to this method, and then it will actually help you compute how the interaction should look like. Because I think as like developers, we just want to push out as fast as possible, so we don't want to think so much, especially if you have side projects and design is not like your main priority, so you can just put this thing in. So there is this thing called primary, and primary is basically like the primary color of the outline button. And then at the same time, you could see familiar things that you have actually used if you were to want to have a different shape. So stadium border is like a peel type of like shape, and then the side you can put in a border side as well. So style from method, yeah, it's a convenience method that constructs an outline button from the button style given simple values. So this style from can be used in other what do you call that, other buttons. So text button has its own style from, and then elevator button has its own style from method as well. So the difference is that this between these two is the button style object. It's a little bit unclear for you to configure the button styling, but it gives you granular control on how any interaction should be shown. But for the so you could see that the material state property, you can see you can return a color if it's hovered or pressed. But for the style from, which I'm going to show later after this, it's actually pretty simple. It's a clearer way to configure button styling. And at the same time, I would say it gives enough control on how any interaction or, different configurations or how the button should look like. So let me demo you quickly on the different styling. So let me use the line buttons or outline buttons. And then for the outline buttons, we have the simple case of hover color, splash color, highlight color, and such. See the outline button? Yes. So the outline button, I mean, the difference is pretty simple. It's like a text button, but with just an outline. So let me zoom in for you guys. So it's just an outline. But the cool part is that for the outline button, it only makes the purple color at the border, while the outline button is, I like it a lot. It just fills up very nicely. Okay, so for the outline button, you can just do as per usual the old way. But for the new way, for the outline button, you could see that you can use the style from property. So let me go through a little bit on style from different properties that you can do. So you got like padding, you got minimum size, you got shape, you got primary, and you have like on surface. So I'm going to show you a little bit on like, for example, primary. So let me save this. Now you can see that now it actually changed the whole like overall color or the primary color. Yellow is a little bit bright. So let me put red instead. Okay. So now, okay, it's so much better. The outline button is now it actually handles for you everything. So lastly, there is this thing called on surface. So on surface is another word for saying that when the button is disabled. So on surface, let's return a color green, for example, right? And then in order for you to disable a button, you pass in a null value on your on pressed parameter over here. So let's do that. So you could see that the outline button over here is actually not is not clickable. But the cool thing is that the new buttons, right? Okay, let me show a difference as well. So for the outline button, for the on press, let me put a null as well, and you can see the difference for the buttons, right? So for the outline button over here, you could see that nothing really changed. Your cursor just doesn't change. I'm using Flutter Web, by the way. So then the new buttons, right? If you were to like hover over it, you could see that your mouse actually changes into another cursor, which I believe this is like the disable button cursor. So I guess that's the new thing that you can do, which is you can also add in like how your cursor looks like. And then there is also the theming where you can actually add in the colors when it's on surface or disabled. Right, so it's pretty cool. Now let's go back to the slide. So I would say it gives enough control on how any interaction. So if you want more granular control, you can use the button style object. So now we talk a little bit. We have seen how we can change the color and we use the different properties of the new buttons, right? Can the text style shared through the app? Text style, sorry, it should be button style. But the answer is yes, even though if it's text style. So we're gonna be using themes. So themes are basically like a way for you to make your app look consistent and easy for users to not be like use your app. So I mean, it makes users easy to use your app if you have a consistent design. So as a developer, why should you care about theming? Right. So theming, if you were to work with designers, right, designers have this thing called design systems. So design systems is where you are able to have a particular way for a certain app should look like, right? And then the thing is that the theming will actually help you work with designers because it allows you to share your typography, primary or accent or secondary colors across your whole app. So the advantages is that you don't have to recreate a style from scratch, or and at the same time it's consistent with your designer's design system. And then you also can do changes without going through every file, right? So that was the problem initially when people wanted to change the style of a button. They can't do through the theme for some reason. So that's why theming actually helps in the new material buttons. So for example, if you want to create a simple button theme, this is how you usually do it. So I want to create a button theme that is in blue color. So this is the old way that you do it. Then if I were to make it a little bit fatter on the left and right side, you probably add some horizontal edge insets. And then the problem is that all of the buttons actually has the same color, but sometimes you want different colors. So how you do it, so it will be same for the old buttons, which is called raised, flat, and outline button. So is there a way to separate the button themes? Yes. So how you're going to do that is this. So for the old button theme, you add in a button theme data, but for the new material buttons, right, you have three separate different theme for your text, but three separate themes according to your three separate buttons, right? So your text button theme, elevated button theme, and your outline button theme. So all of them requires the theme data accordingly. So if you want to, for example, change the text button style for all of your different apps, right? Then you can actually do that. So for text button, it probably looks something like this. And then for your elevator button, you want to make it a little bit red and a little bit more like a pill. So, and then you want to change your style as well. And then your outline button, you want to make it a little bit more yellowish and a bit more boxy. So all of these actually will be according to the style that you actually pass through your theme data, which is perfect because I think most of the time we want to add some flair to the different types of buttons. So another question is, will the old buttons be deprecated? So I think you guys probably know the answer. Yes, because I think it's easier for you to actually style the different buttons, and it will make your life so much easier. Because I guess if you want to have different style for the different types of buttons, it will be better. And yeah, you have like probably yeah, I will recommend you to actually migrate them. But that's about it. So do you guys have any questions? Did I take a lot of time? No. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Hey, Harris, thanks for that. Actually, I have you mentioned about deprecation. What about timeline for that?
Timeline for the deprecation. So if I'm not wrong, yeah. So if I'm not wrong, 1 year, like that's how long Flutter Teams gives in terms of like deprecation. But I don't know exactly when it will actually be like removed. So probably a year or so. If I'm not wrong, if I yeah, there is a video talking about how long a deprecated thing will take. Yeah.